Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please let's go to the headlines.
Tonight from Tel Aviv, the breaking news, the history we witnessed right here in the Middle East today. The 20 surviving hostages coming home. The powerful images unfolding on this day. Tears of joy and relief. The remaining hostages reunited with their families tonight, ending a 2-year nightmare. Twin brothers kept apart in captivity, reuniting today. The young woman seen by millions abducted from that music festival on a motorcycle, screaming for her boyfriend as he was taken away by Hamas too. That couple back together for the first time tonight. And just before their release, some of the hostages FaceTiming their parents today. Hamas fighters visible in some of those videos, their parents. Israel tonight releasing hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. This ceasefire, a defining moment for President Trump. Woman in New York City killed. Rain and dangerous winds gusting. Government shutdown, day 13, no end in sight. Thousands of federal workers have been fired. And what Speaker Mike Johnson is now saying about Obamacare subsidies meant to keep healthcare costs down. Tonight, the measles outbreak affecting 2 elementary schools. More than 150 unvaccinated students told to quarantine after being exposed. The scene on the tarmac of Brown, remember, losing control of a refueling hose. The nozzle spraying jet fuel under an American Airlines passenger plane. Tonight, the NFL now investigating the fight breaking out after the Lions-Chiefs game. And this evening here, what the player who started it is now saying. And news tonight about Diane Keaton, the sudden loss of an acting giant so beloved. What's now being reported about her health.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Yor, reporting tonight from Tel Aviv, Israel.
And good evening tonight from Tel Aviv on this historic day. After 2 years in captivity, the final 20 surviving hostages.
All right. So Donald Trump hit the Middle East today for a truly historic Gaza peace summit, and we have the handshake to prove it. Not even Macron's wife has a grip like that. That handshake lasted longer than the most recent French government. So peace is breaking out in the Middle East and in a part of the world where peace is as common as pulled pork. Apparently, not common. Apparently it's due to the guy who the narrative creators deemed Hitler. Maybe they have Adolf confused with Gandhi. That happens. I often mistake Katie Porter for Randy Quaid. But it must be strange for the haters to see Gazans join Israelis in chanting Trump's name over and over. Which makes us wonder, where are the protesters now? The screaming scumbags who tormented Jews on campus, defaced property, tore down posters of hostages. They yelled, "Free, free Palestine." But now that it's free, they're keeping a lower profile than Greta Thunberg's barber. So why is that? Well, it's the difference between true achievement and delusional narratives. And all those narratives lead to is suffering. Take the arson suspect in the Palisades fire, who had posted memes mocking Trump supporters and frequently shared headlines about climate change. It's a similar false narrative that led to Charlie Kirk's murder, the attempted assassinations of Trump, the attacks on ICE and Teslas. But the climate change narratives may be worse than total harm done. Fraudulent climate models led to draining the taxpayers of trillions. To fight a demon that was as real as Dylan Mulvaney's camel toe. Meanwhile, young people were tortured into thinking the world was going to end every 15 minutes. And now a young climate hysteric causes massive death and destruction. Born from fantasy. You see the pattern? But then there's reality. The peace deals. Good news for the real world, but bad news for...
Tonight, we are live in Israel for the historic events here and across the region. The last of the living Israeli hostages finally free, as President Trump declares a historic dawn of a new Middle East. The emotional homecomings after more than 2 years in captivity, hostages racing to their parents, siblings jumping into the arms of their family, fathers clinging to their sons. We were there with the crowds as the nation learned they were free, thousands cheering as helicopters carrying them flew by. President Trump on the ground here, the hero's welcome he received, his triumphant speech to Israel's parliament, and the signing ceremony he oversaw. Why he says this will be a lasting peace. Plus the thousands of Palestinian prisoners and detainees freed, now home, as questions grow about how Gaza will rebuild and what will come of Hamas. The powerful nor'easter slamming the East Coast, communities underwater as tropical storm force winds and storm surge batter the region, and a ground stop at one of the busiest airports in the U.S. In Alaska, the remnants of a typhoon sweeping away homes, helicopters rescuing dozens of people, the urgent search for those still missing. The new warning from the Speaker of the House, why this could be the longest government shutdown ever. The terrifying scene on a Massachusetts highway, a small plane crashing during the height of rush hour. Plus, the moments of pure joy after more than 2 years of agony. What friends and family of hostage survivors tell us now that the nightmare is finally over. Nightly News starts right now.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Yamas, reporting tonight from Israel.
Hello, you're watching Sky News. I'm Nick Creation. Here are the headlines. Joy as all remaining living Israeli hostages are returned from Gaza, but there's anger over a failure to hand back the remains of all those who died. Celebrations as almost 2,000 Palestinians are released by Israel as part of the Gaza peace deal. While the man who brokered the agreement declares an end to the war in Gaza and a new dawn for the Middle East.
It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region.
And then in Egypt, as world leaders sign the ceasefire deal, the US president is congratulated for his efforts. But pressing questions now about what comes next for the peace talks and the people of the region. And also ahead.
4, 3, 2, 1.
The last off, Elon Musk's SpaceX launches the 11th test flight of the Starship rocket that it hopes to send to Mars. Morning, thank you for your company here on Sky News this Tuesday. Israel has celebrated the return of all the remaining living Israeli hostages after their release by Hamas. Their return, Israel set free almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
This is DW News live from Berlin. Hamas releases all surviving Israeli hostages from Gaza. The men reunite with their families in Israel after 2 years in captivity. In exchange, Israel frees nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Relatives welcome their loved ones home in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. And also coming up, long-range weapons are on the table at talks this week between the Ukrainian and US presidents. Volodymyr Zelensky wants Tomahawk missiles to counter Russia, and Donald Trump could approve the deal. Plus, the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built blasts off on its latest test flight. What are we learning from SpaceX's Starship? I'm Tommy Online. Welcome to the program.
President Donald Trump has hailed what he called a tremendous day for the Middle East, as he and regional leaders signed a declaration to cement the ceasefire in Gaza. The signing came just hours after the last remaining 20 Israeli hostages returned home, ending over 2 years of captivity.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nabaz. On the NewsHour tonight, a day of reunion. Israeli hostages and Palestinian detainees are released after 2 long years of war.
Someone ripped our heart, and now coming back.
The Trump administration's latest round of mass firings further hollows out the Department of Education, which the president has pledged to close.
And indigenous activist Leonard Peltier, convicted of killing 2 FBI agents, adjusts to life outside prison after his sentence was commuted.
I would die for the people if I had to, but I was not going to turn against my people. So I stayed defiant all the 49 years plus in prison.
Hello and thank you for joining us here on Night Watch on France 24. I'm Kumal Spoler, and these are your headlines. Israelis and Palestinians celebrate the return of their loved ones as the last 20 living hostages are returned to their families and almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are released from Israeli prisons, prompting hopes that a permanent end to 2 years of war is in sight. Malagasy President Ange Rajwell says he is in a safe place and will not step down despite mounting pressure, calling for the constitution to be respected. According to sources, he left the island over the weekend after 3 weeks of intense protests, exfiltrated by the French military. And French President Nicolas Sarkozy will head to prison on October 21st to serve his 5-year sentence. He was convicted last month of criminal conspiracy over a scheme for Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi to fund his 2007 presidential campaign. In the program in the Middle East, where Israelis and Palestinians are celebrating the release of their loved ones as part of the U.S. brokered truce. However, the ceasefire deal remains.
This is Asia Now.
It's 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi, and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. Good morning, I'm Rani Samtani. At this hour, Singapore's GDP growth slows to 2.9% in the July to September quarter, but still beats expectations amid global trade uncertainty. U.S. President Donald Trump basks in the spotlight as world leaders joined him for the signing of the Gaza peace deal in Egypt, ending 2 years of war between Israel and Hamas in the Palestinian enclave.
Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East.
And hostages and prisoners have returned home, marking a crucial first step towards ending the devastating conflict.
This Monday night for Israel's surviving hostages, the end of their excruciating ordeal. Plus the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and praise for the American president's critical role in all of this.
This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
The huge hurdles to permanent peace, the questions about Gaza's future, and whether a Palestinian state will ever be established.
It is the only way to achieve the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian and Israeli peoples to end the conflict and live in peace.
Plus, Canada's potential role in maintaining peace.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
In Israel tonight, there is a potent mix of joy, relief, and some sorrow. All surviving Israeli hostages taken by Hamas just over 2 years ago are now back in the arms of their loved ones and in coffins. 4 hostages who died in captivity also came home. Hamas says they don't know the location of some of the other 24. In the occupied Overnight, West Bank police could not hold back jubilant crowds as 88 Palestinian prisoners were released from Israeli jails, many of whom had been locked up for years. Though this man, Marwan Barghouti, widely seen as the next potential Palestinian leader, was not among them. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Hamas has released the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages who've been held in Gaza for the past 2 years. Red Cross vehicles carried the captives from Gaza to Israel. Hamas is also in the process of handing over the bodies of 28 Israeli captives who've been confirmed dead. In exchange, Israel is releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of whom had been held without charge. This all comes as part of the first phase of a U.S.-backed 20-point plan. Earlier today, President Trump addressed the Israeli Knesset.
Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East.
A group of left
The last surviving Israelis held by Hamas for 2 years are released in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
President Trump gets a hero's welcome in Israel, then flies to Egypt to sign the Gaza peace deal. But this is only phase 1, and there is much more work to be done.
This took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it?
Also tonight, a deadly nor'easter brings strong winds, heavy rain, and flooding to the east.
And Eye on America, fatal distraction, cracking down on drivers using cell phones.
They're just as dangerous, if not more, than a drunk driver on the highway.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm John Dickerson.
I'm Maurice Dubois.
There is more hope for peace in the Middle East tonight than there has been in a very long time. Hamas today released the last of the surviving Israelis held hostage since October 7th, 2023. And Israel, in turn, freed hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
This is the first phase of the Trump peace plan, but remember, it is a 20-point plan, and there's still a long way to go. The president was in Israel today, meeting with families of the now free hostages and addressing the Knesset.
The president said the long nightmare for Israelis and Palestinians is over. Now, he said, it is time to turn the battlefield victories against terrorists into the ultimate prize, peace and prosperity for the entire Middle East.
Mr. Trump then traveled to Egypt to sign the peace deal and hold a summit on the future of Gaza and the region. CBS Morning's co-host Tony DeCoppola is heading up our coverage and joins us now from Jerusalem. Tony.
Starts Wednesday, November 5, ABC TV.
It'd be a crime to miss it. Elation and Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners reunited with their loved ones, with attention now turning to the next phase of the Gaza peace plan. The search for missing 4-year-old Gus Bidens in a remote part of South Australia. Treasurer Jim Chalmers defends the government's superannuation reforms while calling for bipartisan support. And the federal government launches an ad campaign for its world-first social media ban for under 60s. Next up, and all been reunited with their loved ones in Israel after spending 2 years in captivity in Gaza, along with the bodies of all captives. Almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees have all been released. Police correspondent Duran is in Tel Aviv.
Nine fell across Israel and Gaza. The operation.
I'm Beth Turner on The Late Show Live tonight. The hostages are home, and it's all thanks to one man.
Today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace.
Trump is returning to the United States of America, having secured peace in the Middle East. We're going to count down to the moment that he touches down and returns to the White House. Also, we're going to go live to Tel Aviv, where independent journalist Winston Marshall, who's seen the war carried out before his very eyes, will join me for a special dispatch 44 miles away in Gaza. Destruction, of course. So what is going to happen next?
No more fear. From Gaza is finally here. From Gaza shine bright, golden future, a brand new light. Peace and death, the dream is done.
Do you remember that AI image of what it could look like? Well, I'm going to be joined by an architect who has worked in the Gaza Strip, and he'll tell me how realistic Trump's Gaza Riviera vision actually is. And on the grand stage, with the world watching, did our very own Prime Minister manage to avoid embarrassment? Didiak.
These people all came in like 20-minute notice.
Oh, it's just so awkward. We're going to be diving headfirst, of course, into the stories from tomorrow's papers as well. They are just warm off the printing machines, and we're live in Washington, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about, including this.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Later this week, we might see a repeat of that, because I can reveal that Donald Trump is set to meet Volodymyr Zelensky. Can the American president stop 2 wars in a week? And take a careful look at this moment. Not many picked this up, but this was possibly a secret row between French President Emmanuel Macron and President Trump. It's getting a little bit macho there, not letting go of each other's hands. But what did they say? I'll tell you all about it later in the show. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live.
Africa News. The news.
The aftermath of severe flooding in Morocco's Nador province this weekend. The northeastern coastal city saw 66 millimeters of rain in just 24 hours, leaving streets, homes and vehicles underwater. There are 3 wadis that overflow here: Wad Imouadan, Wad Dragout and Wad Boubram. They pour their waters here, they don't go to other places, they come here. No fatalities were recorded, but several roads were damaged and schools forced to suspend classes. It's another sign of the vulnerability of local infrastructure to extreme weather. Every time these wadis flood, it causes problems here. The community helps each other, but it creates real dangers for people, homes and property. Last week, Morocco's Minister of Equipment and Water said managing the risk of floods has become a pressing issue for the country, particularly as climate change accelerates.
Sustained applause and a standing ovation greeted United States President Donald Trump as he entered the Israeli Knesset on Monday. Addressing Israeli lawmakers and U.S. officials, Trump hailed the return of the remaining 20 living hostages from Gaza and pressed for a lasting peace in the region.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu credited Trump and pledged his commitment to peace.
Mr. President, you are committed to this peace. I am committed to this peace, and together, Mr. President, we will achieve this peace. My friends, this is only a partial list, but it's enough to affirm what I've said time and again. Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House.
The truce between Israel and Hamas remains tenuous. Parties have not agreed on Gaza's post-war governance, the territory's reconstruction, and Israel's demand that Hamas disarm. Negotiations over those issues could break down, and Israel has hinted it may resume military.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.